I'm Robin Sutton, I'm the Director of Communities for Colwell Council, and I'm going to be running this workshop with Andrew Libby from the Hebden Bridge Community Association, but Andrew's the star of the show, so I'm only going to say a few words to set us off, and then some few key points at the end. I think there's an African proverb which says that success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. And I think there's probably quite a lot of people that would say that they had something to do with this piece of work, but I certainly would say I came into it quite late on, and at a point when a huge amount had actually been done to progress what I think is one of the iconic pieces of asset transfer in the country. And it's a bit like when with music festivals, everyone was there at Woodstock, or everyone was there when the Berlin Wall came down. Well, if you talk about asset transfer, a lot of people would claim to have a role in making this happen. And actually a lot of people did work very hard. We've obviously got Deputy Leader here and many others who have played a role in this. But I would say that Andrew's drive and his resilience, and certainly my very early experience of that, coming into the council in early 2010, made it clear that Andrew's tenacity in making this happen was really key. So I think it's really fantastic that we're going to have an opportunity to hear from Andrew about this work. And then I'm going to just say a few things at the end, and we're going to make sure, through timing, that I'll kind of share it as well to give you a chance to ask questions and us to have a bit of an interactive debate. Okay, Andrew, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Robin, for this kind words. And welcome to the town hall. One of the things that I've learned over the last 3 years, and quite a bit really, but one of the things I have learned is you can't necessarily always believe in contractors when they say they will definitely building and finish by. I'm sorry you had to come up the back stairs today, but come back in a couple of weeks and it should be fully open. A very quick introduction to the town hall. It's such a filthy day. You probably haven't seen or you know them, but you possibly haven't been around the front of the building. This is the Victorian part of the town hall of Hebden Bridge, built in 1897, reflecting, I think, very much that civic pride that the Victorians had in their town, that pride in the community, the desire to make public buildings as fine as they could be. And here, in fact, is the first floor council chamber. It's a lovely room, panelled with beautiful panelling, lovely plaster ceiling, and so on. And it was a sense of that being an important part of our history of the town and an important part of our public realm, which I think meant that a number of felt to ensure that there was a future for the building and not just a past. But if you will go back a few years, and these are some pictures I took up to 2008, 2009, behind the scenes, it wasn't quite the same picture. There were problems with the building, as with any old building. There was a need for some TLC, which, to be honest, the local authority, for all the reasons I understand, just wasn't able to give funding problems, priorities, and the like. So there were problems with the plants. So there were problems with, there were problems with pigeons, not only outside, but also inside in various places. So what's the story? The story was one of a building which was the focal point of the community from 1897 right through really until 1974. And those of you in local government will know 1974 was the year of the big change in England and Wales to local government reform. And at that point, our old urban district council and the rural district councils were subsumed into a larger authority, in our case it's Caldwell. And little by little, functions which had previously been delivered just in Hebden Bridge started migrating, normally down the river to Halifax. So little by little, we lost, for example, the registrar for births and deaths, we lost the housing office, we lost the cash desk, and we had council staff who were working in the building who were no longer actually community facing, no longer customer facing. And that really does leave the question open of what is the role for a building like ours? And we know there are hundreds like it up and down the country. What is the role of a town hall in a small market town going to be in the 21st century? So it was a problem. And it's a problem, I think, looking for a solution. I guess, I can't speak on behalf of the council, and Robin can chip in later, but I suspect that the council's concern was that they had an expensive building to maintain, which was costing them quite a lot just to keep the fabric together, and which was listed, quite rightly, greatly listed, and therefore difficult to find other solutions for, difficult to dispose of. Our concern from the community side was that this was a key part of what I would like to call the public realm, a key part of what is important for us as a community, public space, public buildings. and potentially another public building which could be lost. And I say another public building because, in a sense, this whole project began, and Janet Batty, who's here at the front, will be able to chip in here because she was the person who really, at the very beginning, got things going. It began with a loss. It began with bad news. It began with the loss of the Adult Education Centre in Hebden, which sold off very, very quickly, auctioned, sold for almost nothing at all, and an eyesore for about 6 or 7 years after that because it was left empty. It's only just recently started being done up. So we lost a part of the public realm, and we got, in exchange, an eyesore. And I think we were determined, those of us who live locally, not to allow that again. So Janet, and working with the town council, and we have 4 rural parishes, established a working party to try and talk to Calderell about what the solution was, the long-term solution for not just 2 or 3 years, but 50 years. The Quirk report you've heard about was an important weapon for us, an important tool for us, because it enabled us to go to Calderell and say, look, this is what's happening nationally, this is what you're being encouraged to think about. And we were able also, through the Community Assets Programme, we put a bid in, we were shortlisted for lottery funding, and we fell at the last hurdle that time around, so we didn't manage to get Community Assets Programme funding, but it did enable us to get together a group of people in the community who were determined to push forward on this. We established a new charitable trust, Hebden Bridge Community Association. That happened in 2008. We launched our Friends of the Town Hall scheme, which I want to say a little bit more about in a moment, a year after that. We put in a business plan, effectively, to Calderell in the middle of 2009, and delighted to say that the Cabinet, in December 2009, agreed to the asset transfer, the first in Calderell. It was a brave decision by the councillors. They were having to pass across a public building to community trust. It could have gone wrong, and I think we have to credit all the councillors. It was a Conservative administration at that point. We've since worked very closely with the Lib Dem and Labour coalition. But it showed that our council was actually prepared to look for new solutions for problems. And the asset transfer took place on the 1st of April 2010. Now, we had endless meetings. I won't tell you some of the ups and downs of that period of discussion with Calderell. We did have endless discussions. And I think our concerns from the community side was, as really what Ed was saying a moment ago, was this really going to be an asset transfer, or was it going to be a liability transfer? Were we going to be landed with the responsibility of looking after a building which was expensive to look after, which probably didn't have, at that point, much in the way of potential income streams? Were we going to be picking out something where we were going to be doomed to fail? There was a time in the discussions where we still felt we were in them and us with the council. We wanted to say, no, it's us together on this. But particularly with some of perhaps not with the members, not with the senior officers, but with other parts of the council, there was still a sense of them and us. We were just another organisation wanting to rent a facility. We were treated either as a straightforward commercial deal, or perhaps as a community organisation that wanted grant funding, and actually we were neither. And from the council side, well, Robin, you can chip in on this later, but I would imagine that the council were concerned to ensure that we were properly governed, that we were in some sense accountable to our community, that we had capacity to look after this building, that the arrangement was sustainable in the very long term, and that if there was a precedent being established, it was a good precedent, not a bad one. So there we go. What we came to was a realisation that the way forward was a partnership approach, one that recognised where local authorities are currently in terms of being extremely stretched financially. A recognition, as the Quirk report said, that sometimes communities can give creativity and energy and ideas which perhaps local authorities can't access. That we can access sources of funding which local authorities can't. And the building you're in today was funded exactly because of that. We were able to get funding of over £3 million as a charitable trust. And that really this was a way forward for our particular building and our particular community. And as I say, there were some hiccups along the way, but I think that the grief and the pain that we encountered along the way was worth it for what we got at the end. The actual arrangement we negotiated with Calderell was an asset transfer of the leasehold of the building. The freehold stays with Calderell. The leasehold was transferred on what is now a 125-year leasehold at no cost. And the arrangement was that the council would continue to contribute the amount of money that they were previously putting in to maintain the building, but instead of doing it directly, they would do it through us. So it didn't cost the council more, but on the other hand, there weren't savings for Cordell. It was also very important for us that Cordell continued to use the building as our anchor tenant, because without that we wouldn't have the source of income to enable the building to be sustainable. One of the reasons why we wanted to go ahead with the new building was to get new sources of income to make us more secure in the future. It's also an important principle that there was no ongoing grant funding. We're not a project which is non-funded. I think we were very conscious back in 2008-2009 when we were first involved in discussing this. We wanted to create a new form of public ownership. It was important for us that this wasn't a transfer of a public building into private hands, albeit community association hands. It was remaining as part of the public realm, but we were really reinterpreting what we meant by public ownership. And we were moving away from perhaps the 20th century idea that the state is the vehicle that holds things in the public good, either the national state or the local state. We were trying to recreate a new model for ways in which public buildings could be held for the good of all. And as it says there, our pledge in those early days was we were holding this kind of more in public ownership. And we look back to 19th century ideas of cooperations, mutualities, and self-help, as well as looking forward to 21st century models of what it meant to have things public. A little bit of technical information for you. We looked at various legal options. We looked at the Community Benefit Society under the Industrial and Popular Societies Act, which has some benefits in terms of community share opportunities. We looked at a community interest company, but in the end we went the more straightforward route and the more traditional route of a company limited by guarantee. We are also a registered charity. We are a member of COPS UK, as well as being a member of the county, and we're a member of COPS UK because we are in a sense a community cooperative. The trustees, 10 of us, I find one of the trustees, are elected by our members. So the members once a year have a chance to say who they want to be the trustees and carry forward the work of the association. If we were going to have a new form of public ownership, we had to be accountable to our community, and we were very keen that as many people in the community as possible bought into what we were trying to do. We launched the Friends scheme, Friends of the Town Hall scheme, with a major campaign. We had leaflets in everyone's front doors, we had stores at the station, co-ops, and all sorts of places. We about 12 shops locally, directors' recruiting centres. You could go into the shop, pay you £10, you could get a mug, you've seen the mugs downstairs, we give those to all our friends, and you could sign up there and then in the post office or in the shops. And I'm pleased to say we have about 600 friends. It's a community of about 5,000, so we're limited value now. And here, this is a photo that was taken of one of the estate agents, actually, which was one of the enrolment points, and this was their window at the time. You can see it was closer up, and ready to go in to say, and hand over your with a friend. Now, immediately after April 2010, we were able to make some immediate changes. We were able to do some little things, trying to give back that TLC, which I mentioned earlier, to the building. We instituted recycling, which curiously hadn't actually happened before. We did a bit of replastering, we put decorators in to paint some of the rooms, which particularly we did looking after. We got a weddings licence. We weren't able at that point to control the births and deaths registrar, but we were able to get weddings here. First time that was possible in Hebden. And although it meant giving a cheque for over £1,000 back to the council, it was a really good present. It's been an important function for the centre since then, and an important income generator, actually. We increased the use of meeting rooms. We encouraged community groups to make more use of what was here. And we did things like sorting out dry rock, which was but we also, I guess, had bigger ambitions. Right from the beginning, we knew that we needed to make use of land at the back of the Victorian Town Hall, which had never been built on. Almost like the money ran out in 1898 and left half finished. So a lot of our efforts went into raising, say, the 3.4 million we needed for this new development. And we did that for a number of reasons. We did that because it was a way of making the town hall much more of a point of the community, giving us new community space, new hall downstairs, which the town hasn't had for about 30 years. We lost our public hall Providing enterprise space, because our vision for the town hall is one which combines community and work, holistically brings together the work life and community life. So we have 30 units on this floor and on the second floor. And also to give us the financial sustainability we need for this project. We can't depend indefinitely necessarily on just the income that comes from Portobello as our tenant. We need other sources of income, and with this new building we feel we have that. So we did a 10-year business plan, we went to the architects, we got funding, we got 2 million from community builders, and we got 1.2 from the RDF. Not easy for community organisations to access European funding. We worked hard to get that, but we did get it. We got our planning permission. We obviously had a lot of consultation locally with the town to make sure the town were happy with what we were proposing. The builders came on site in April last year, and the building should have been completed about 2 weeks ago, and will be completed in about 2 weeks' time. So you're here right at the beginning of an exciting new story for us. It was led very much by the voluntary board of trustees. It's been great since January this year when we've had our executive director in post. It's wonderful to feel that our role stops being operational and starts becoming strategic. But it was a project which has been very much volunteer-led and community-led. And as I said, well, the business model is that we have 30 enterprise units. We have business associates, which are people who give us £25 a month to use the building as they need. People who perhaps work from home who want to have a casual base. We have the business conference market. We have community events and meetings. We have the catering concession, which we bring in a certain amount each year. And then we have our existing tenants, primarily the council. What are our challenges? The challenges are obviously making sure the business plan works in practice. We've been pleased that we've managed to fill most of the units in year one. Our business plan actually suggested 50%, now we're about 80%. So we're starting, in a fairly positive way. We're pleased about that. We have to be efficient. We have to be professional. We have to watch the finance very carefully. We have to meet our funders' criteria, particularly the European funding. Experience the RDF and levels of like that. We have to meet our responsibilities to our community, we have to be accountable, and we have to service these 1.25 million that we have to borrow, which came in the form of a loan and in the form of a grant. Some questions. I mean, there is the question of whether communities really should be expected to do this. Isn't this why local authorities were invented in the end of the 19th century, provide those sort of functions for their communities? But these are some of the things which we had to get up to speed on, to make sure that we were doing correctly, to make sure we were meeting charitable legislation, company law, getting things right on VAT, health and safety, of course, the responsibilities of running a public building, state aid, we had to tussle with state aid issues, all those sort of things which you have to get right if you're going to take on a project like this. And again, it's a question which I think we've asked ourselves over the years as we've gone on with this project. Is this the way to deliver public services? Are we merely replacing work which actually a properly funded local authority should be doing for us? Are volunteers able to be accountable to the community? Will they suffer burnout? What's the long-term prognosis for a project? Does this in fact even undermine local democracy? Does it, as somebody mentioned earlier, actually open the door to potential privatisation of public services? So some questions there which, we do ask, and I think it's important that anyone else who's coming into Asset Transfer also asks those. But I think I have to say that in our case, in the particular context of the Town Hall, this has demonstrated a way of communities coming in, being able to harness the energy and creativity of the community, being able to access funding, and I would say it's a remarkable to be a story which is ending as a success story rather than as a problem. If you want more information, our website is there, hebden.org.uk. But I'm going to shut my mouth because I do want to give a chance of that history.
Okay, thanks Andrew. Just a few words then from the local authority perspective. I'm just going to focus on three things. One is just the operating environment, I think, that needs to be in place as a local authority. Something about what we learned and then what we've still got to do. In terms of the operating environment, I think it's it's really important to recognise that if you're not a local authority, that you experience it can be a very unwieldy, bureaucratic and complex entity to operate with or engage with. It can also feel like that in a local authority as well. And I think you have to be clear that if you are a local authority, you do what you can to create a permissive environment to allow these kind of things to be considered, but you're not going to get everyone on board. You're not going to bring the whole thing into some kind of buy-in immediately from day one. And you have to kind of work with the kind of green sheets you have. And I think that's really important to kind of not be overwhelmed by that and not feel that you're going to kind of fail early on, because there will be, as Andrew said, a huge amount of kind of challenges along the way. I mean, it's really good to have an organisation that gets it. Obviously, the political context is really important in that. But getting it is something that I think you will have to work very hard at. And a town hall is quite an iconic building for a local authority. And whilst there had been a kind of history, as Andrew said, of gradual erosion or, at worst, neglect of some elements of what the town hall was doing, there were very good reasons for that. And there was also a kind of concern about the future alternatives that were being put forward to the local authority. In terms of what we learned, and I think what we're still learning is this does take time. We've got a lot quicker, and we've got this process a lot more effective than it was when we went through this. And really, this was the one where we learned a lot and made a lot of mistakes. And if you are embarking on this, either as an organisation, community organisation for the first time, or as a local authority that's not done something like this, you have to be prepared that you're going to go through all those mistakes and that learning. And the fact someone else has done it elsewhere isn't going to matter. You're going to have to go through some of that yourself. I think we're looking sharp, probably on the third version of our asset transfer framework now. So we actually didn't really have that framework in place when we did this. We kind of created it to learn from this, and we've had to then change it because it's very difficult to tackle the range of things that an asset transfer might be about. I mean, we've had a rock transferred, we've had a piece of field transferred. You know, it's very different to a town hall, but there are some common principles, and I think having a framework, certainly I think for members to then be able to consider it being through that framework is really important when it gets to cabinet. I think I also say it isn't over till it's over, and it's not over. And one thing I'd say we've learnt is that if you're a local authority, this is not about shutting the door and letting them get on with it. And if you're a community organisation, it's not about taking it over and then seeing that somehow it's yours and then the local authority is not an entity that needs to be factored into this. It's actually just developing a different kind of relationship than there was before. And we're still in that relationship, clearly as an anchor tenant, but even if we weren't as an anchor tenant, I think that's something that's really important. In terms of what I think there's still to do for the local authority, we do feel this is a success story. But there's something, if you know Berlin and the kind of experience of it, and spending time in Berlin after the wall came down, one thing that really stuck with me when talking to people in Berlin was the wall is still in people's minds. It actually may have come down, but several years later, that wall is still in people's heads as a barrier in terms of influencing their behaviour. And I think the reality is that it takes a while for these things to kind of get out of people's heads. So all those risks, worries that the local authority had, haven't gone away. They're still there, not only with this asset transfer, but with others. And you have to just accept that that's a reality and work with that. And think that this isn't something that's finished or done. So I think that's all I really want to say in terms of the local authority perspective. We're still learning from this as well as the asset transfers. And we are always at risk of defaulting back to our previous position. And I think with any of this, some asset transfers may not come off, either at the point of development stage or once we go through that process. That isn't a failure of concept. You know, businesses kind of fail, other things fail, projects fail. We believe this can succeed, but I think we are very impressed and share some sort of sense of pride about what this has happened. This is done for Hebden Bridge, but it's not over yet. I think with that, I just would be keen to open this out to questions, and very much in a spirit of not just questions to us, but conversation within the room. So we've got about 15 minutes, so it would be really good maybe if anyone would like to ask any questions and get the ball rolling. There's a gentleman at the back I'll ask.
Hi guys, Simon Scout here. My name's Jonathan and I'm a co-op consultant working in Greater Manchester with a local authority there. Question for each of you. Interested in the asset transfer framework. How do you go about developing it? What's in it? And is it there to share to other local authorities? And then in terms of Andrew, the ERDF, I've often looked at ERDF as a way of funding this sort of thing. Can you just let me know what you're delivering in terms of ERDF?
I'll deal with the first question and Andrew will deal with the second. Yes, the framework can be shared. It's been published and approved by Cabinet, so it's in the public domain. It's on the council website, but if you want to give details to Sian at the end, then she can. Sian's probably the best person to share that with you. In terms of how it created, we made it up really, to be honest. We made it up based on, because there wasn't, was there, Sian in particular, yeah, we collectively, but Sian in particular, we recognised that there wasn't really anything else out there, but there was a few stages that were key. So first of all, you needed some kind of gateway process. The real risk was that you're going to get all these requests, and they're all at different stages, and actually some of them are just not going to happen. So there has to be a clear gateway process where people from different parts of the council come together and review the feasibility of something at a very early stage. And that's not just community people, that's legal people, finance people, property people. Come together, and sometimes we do it with a specific one on just one application, but otherwise we have a kind of meeting that comes together on that and do initial gateway assessment. We've tightened that as we've gone on, so our later versions have got tighter than that because we need to manage expectation. Then there's the kind of needs to develop the business plan, to review that, to make sure it links into something that we believe politically is something that could be signed off. So before it even gets into a political process, we do those checks. And actually a lot of the time and effort is getting to that point through that gateway process. I think that's I'm happy to share that. We actually have authorities.
And perhaps I could just say from a council point of view, Coldale's Cabinet, what we look for is to make certain that the business plan's sound, so that as we transfer it over, that it's not going to fail from the outset. And community support to make certain that however they demonstrate it, that it's not just 3 or 4 people, but that they've got the community behind them. I mean, what we did here, we set up Friends, different places do it different ways, but it's one of the touchstones I think that we look for. And we have approved a number of asset transfers where the process hasn't been fully completed, and that's because we want to encourage them to go forward because they've gone so far, but they need to do some more work. And it's a bit like a house seller, isn't it? We say it's not. I suppose it's conditional on, and we try and set a deadline for it so it doesn't drift. And we've got 3 or 4 of those where we've said yes, you've done well so far, but before we'll complete it, you need to do this and this.
Could I just ask a quick point on that around community benefit and getting greatest economic value and how you kind of balance that? Because it was an overriding assumption, I think, within the local authorities that best economic value has to be obtained, and yet there's a great case to be made for community benefit. How much that's taken into consideration?
I'd like to think we do take that into account. It does depend on the type of asset you're looking to transfer. So if you're looking at land for, say, allotments, I think it's very simple. You can say that in terms of, and actually it's been land that's had very little value, that where is the potential to bring that into life. So we look at that as a very simple case of there isn't a huge economic benefit of doing anything else with it, but there's huge community benefit of doing this with it. I think on other things, and we'll face these challenges more, we are looking at obviously transferable cost, and that's a tough call sometimes. It will be around a potential asset where you might want to realise economic value to the authority at a time when you need capital revenue. So that is always a difficult decision that we take into account. But I think members want to be clear that that's a factor that they'll consider, but we will very much assess and balance those things before it gets into a capital decision. It's a case by case. I mean, clearly the tagline, I think there's no political appetite to sell this off, but there wasn't a desire to do something better with it. On other things, there might be some other strong economic alternatives, but in our experience, very few, I think, have been things that we could realise economic, some hard cash value. Can I just, I don't know where Andrew has
Yeah, so just quickly on the IDF, we went on priority 2, which is the business business priority. I had the enterprise units. 46% funding, you have to get match funding. So we by the skin of our teeth got the match funding. It was really, really much lower. So, when we first went to meet our really helpful project officer who looked forward at that time, he did say, I don't know why anyone would ever want to apply for the IDF funding, it's so difficult. And it's certainly true that it's not easy. But in our case, it was the answer to what we wanted to achieve.
Okay, there's a gentleman at the back first, and then there's a bit of a
my name's Paul, I'm from Shipley in West Yorkshire. We occupy a disused school, which is now a local community centre. We've been talking to Bradford Council on and off around asset transfers since about 2008. And the barrier for us is the council's perception of risk. And I just wanted to know how Calderdale approached the issue of risk. You talked about a default position, which is the building returns back into council ownership. And for us, we, as an organisation based in the Hebden Bridge Group, we have a crystal ball and we can look ahead so many years, but we can't promise that won't happen. And that doesn't seem to be an answer that satisfies the council. What's Calderdale's position on this?
I think it touches on what Councillor Batty's talked about in terms of the business plan and how strong the business plan is. I think it will depend very much on what the asset is and the appetite it will be to really do something different with it. And I don't know. So it really would be about what the asset is, what the alternatives, and what's the cost and penalties of something not happening and working. But the appetite for risk is, as I said, the whole organisation will have a very differential view on this. So we did go through it, and still, so from a legal perspective, there was some real anxieties about this process doing this. It could have stopped very early on because there was a real difficulty, and the lease process, the negotiation around that, particularly the scale of this building, the fact we have done it before. So there was, I'm not going to stand here and say that there was no concern from the council about risk, because there was. And I think you can say there still is. These are inherently risky. And that was, I think, probably a source of some frustration at times. The community association felt that, well, actually, we've got the funding in place, done this, look at the building as it is now, look at what we found is what it could be, but you're still putting some barriers there. So that's all part of the dialogue, and I think using this example and others would be a really important thing for you to do, but the reality is, I think each individual council has to go through it themselves.
But there's also quite a useful publication which you might want to waive to the council, which was produced just after the clerk report from ICLG specifically on risk and asset transfer. And it's but that sort of goes through the arguments which a local authority might be raising, and it suggests which of those arguments might be valid and which ones counts on. So if you get hold of that, literally it was, previous administration, but nonetheless I think it's still quite useful.
And I think there was also something about getting the solicitors, the councils and solicitors, not quite getting their sympathy, but it was about them being prepared to take that step, wasn't it? Because we had endless discussions with them, and they seemed to become sympathetic, didn't they? But and we had discussions about reversionary clauses, and if it was to be a freehold transfer, and then the organisation failed, about whether or not something would be written in that the disposal of it could be through the charity for community charitable purposes. There were a number of conversations about that, but in the end it depended on the council being prepared to take the step, didn't it?
Yeah, the other thing about risk, I'd just say, is this is not just a council and the community organisation risk issue. The funders are very, very challenging about this. So the funders want community ownership of assets and yet want incredible numbers. So we had to go back to varying limits to satisfy a funder. We had to do all sorts of things, because they were kind of worried about the risk, actually more than the council. yes, the councils make up about the living with a higher threshold around risk than needed. So that is a battle that you probably will face.
Yeah, what I'd say, I have been single point of contact for asset transfer in Calderdale when I'm working to Robin. And as we've done more of these, working with legal, I'm a policy performance person really, but our legal team have looked at varying leases with different organisations, and been, I think some of the way that the reason why we managed to make it work is because we have been quite flexible and looked at things on a kind of quite case-by-case basis, but at the same time say that trying to find some standards where we can. So we are looking at standard leases for asset transfers and building in some minimum things that we can talk to people up front about. And there are things called joint working agreements that we're now looking at, which are all on the asset transfer unit website, so if anybody's interested. They've done a lot of work with their, I think they're called Andrew Collins solicitors, based in London, looking at standard legal advice and guidance, which we've just kind of begged, borrowed and steal basically, because there's no point in reinventing things, but that can help local authorities, and if you can appoint your local authority towards some of that, it might help.
Okay.
But it does take legal people a while to work their way through it. You start off with a standard commercial lease and a conveyancer, and they do have to work through it. It's not quick, is it?
Just a question. We'll take two or three, then the final question. The gentleman there. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Yeah.
Tony
You
Wright,
can keep the questions short.
Tony Wright, Keith Town Council. We took over from the police authority in the Keith Divisional Police Station, which has now turned into a museum of forensic science, civil properties, and it will be developed as a sign. Now, one thing on that is that there's still elements that we're having to put in place. It's not over once it's done. And one thing on that is that we're interested that you actually mentioned something that you've got a public company limited by guarantee, and you deliberately opted away from the social enterprise culture. And there are problems around that model. Have you got any specific reason why you didn't do that?
Yeah. Okay. Any issues around that one? Yeah. Gentleman there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was interested. You were honest enough to say the thing about them and us as one of your challenges, and I do think it's really important to be honest about that and to look at the issues on that, because I do think my experience is there's an sort of embedded kind of behaviours way of thinking on both sides of the equation. I wondered from your experience, both of you really, are there any specific things that you've discovered that have broken through that, or that could be structured in, some sort of training within local authorities and community groups? I think it's both sides.
Yeah, I'm in Calderdale Industry Museum. I just wondered if you got a single piece of advice that would really move things forward for an organisation.
Just a lot. There's a lot. Go on.
All right. It was more of a question on the asset transfer itself. You mentioned you were still putting the money in that you would annually have paid anyway through the association, and you pay rent as an anchor tenant.
No.
No.
It's done through the rent.
It's just done through the rent. Are you looking at a slide increasing scale as they become more so sustaining?
There's currently a set agreement, but that'll ultimately be a political decision. But I think there's a 10-year agreement in place, and so that's retained at this period of time. But each asset transfer is different. So
you've got a few different variations.
Yeah.
We look on all of them for a slightly decreasing scale of the associations.
Okay. So I'm just going to the social enterprise issue just really quickly.
See, a company limited by guarantee is a standard way for non-profits. It's very straightforward. We use the charity commission model, which we outline is on the website. So no problems there, actually, to be honest. In terms of the them and us, I think it's just a question of building a relationship, actually. I think that's wise, because it probably does involve lots of...
And working out where people come from. Yeah. I mean, there was one of the lovely legal executives who seemed to see no wrong as protecting the council, which I suppose it is.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to help her take the next step.
That's right. That's right. That's good. Just a final thing, maybe if I ask Andrew to say, what's the one bit of advice that you give?
Well, I think you just have to...
Never again.
Keep going.
We can go. It's not over. So
we got an early knockback with the lottery funding, and we took the positive decision that we were going to not only not head up as a no, but actually go bigger rather than smaller. So we have had big dreams for this project, really, and I think ultimately, despite my group, it's that which sort of enables you to keep the eye on the final prize.
Right, thank you for your interest and attention. Have a great day.
Thank you.